For basically all of human history, our brains have been wired to figure out right and wrong in a world that had, well, just a few key players. But what happens when a totally new kind of intelligence gets thrown into the mix? Today, we're diving into the fascinating moral psychology of artificial intelligence.
See, for thousands of years, our moral psychology, that gut sense of what's right and what's wrong, it really only had to deal with three kinds of beings.
You had other people, of course. You had animals. And you had supernatural beings, gods or spirits, depending on the culture. Our entire ethical playbook was built around just these three. But now, there's a fourth player in the game: intelligent machines. And their arrival is forcing us to question everything we thought we knew about morality. It's a whole new ballgame. Okay, so let's really get into this. To make sense of how we're dealing with this new player, we can look at AI through three really distinct moral rules it can play: as a moral agent, a moral patient, and a moral proxy. Let's start with the role we're probably most familiar with: AI as a moral agent. This is when a machine is the one making the decisions, taking actions that have real consequences. And we can actually split this into two important categories. So on one side, you have what are called implicit moral machines. Think of a recommendation algorithm that accidentally sends a kid down a rabbit hole of violent videos. It wasn't designed to make a moral choice, but its actions absolutely have moral weight. Then, on the other side, you have explicit moral machines. These are built specifically to navigate ethical minefields, like a self-driving car that has to decide who to protect in an unavoidable accident.
Now, with those implicit machines, the really tricky thing is how easily hidden biases can sneak in. And a famous investigation by ProPublica into the Compass algorithm, that's a tool used to predict if a defendant will reoffend, well, it blew the lid off this problem.
And this table just shows it so clearly. The algorithm actually made the same number of mistakes for both black and white defendants. So, on the surface, it looked fair. But look at the kind of mistake. White defendants were way more likely to get a favorable error, meaning the algorithm said they were low risk when they weren't. Black defendants, they were much more likely to get an unfavorable error. That, right there, is bias in action.
Okay, so what about those explicit machines, like the self-driving cars? Well, the challenge here isn't so much hidden bias, it's something even bigger. It's called the value alignment problem. Basically, how on earth do we teach a machine what we as humans actually value? I mean, it breaks down into these huge questions. First, who even gets to decide what's moral? Should it be ethicists, the general public, the engineers? Second, how do you even ask them? Simple surveys? Complex virtual reality simulations? And finally, and this is the big one, when you get all these answers, and people are definitely going to disagree, whose values actually get written into the code? These aren't just tech problems. They are some of the biggest philosophical questions of our time. All right, now for our second role. We're going to completely flip the script here. Let's think about AI not as the one making decisions, but as a moral patient, as the one on the receiving end of our actions. I know, this sounds like a question from a sci-fi movie, right? But it's becoming a real puzzle. We all know machines don't have feelings, but the crazy thing is research shows our brains kind of act like they do, especially when we see them being treated badly. This finding is just wild. When people in a study watched a simple little dinosaur robot get abused, their bodies reacted with real stress. Their heart rates changed, they showed actual discomfort. And this is even though they logically knew the robot couldn't feel a thing. It seems like we have this surprising, almost built-in empathy for machines. But here's the twist. Just because we feel bad for a robot getting punched, that does not mean we treat it like an equal partner. Nope. When it comes to actually cooperating with an AI, a very different and very consistent pattern shows up. So here's the key takeaway. In study after study, people are just way less cooperative with machines. Look at this classic game. When two humans played, they cooperated about 49% of the time. But when a human played with a machine, that rate dropped all the way down to 36%. Researchers call this gap the machine penalty. Okay, on to our final role, which might be the most subtle and complex of them all: AI as a moral proxy. This is when we use machines as a kind of go-between, as a tool, or even a disguise in how we interact with other people. This really splits into two main ideas. First, you have delegation, where you basically offload a morally iffy task to an AI, using it like your own personal henchman. And second, you have masquerade, where you use AI as a mask to change how you look to other people. Using AI to do your dirty work is so tempting because it creates these powerful psychological loopholes. Imagine using an AI to automatically fire employees. It gives you plausible deniability. Hey, you can just blame the algorithm. It creates psychological distance from the person you're hurting, and it adds a layer of anonymity. It makes it a whole lot easier to do things you might not do face-to-face.
Now this second form, machine masquerade, is something I bet a lot of us are already doing. Anytime you ask an AI to rewrite an email to sound more confident or to generate a tweet that makes you sound smarter, you're using it as a tool to manage your reputation and influence how others see you.
So we've walked through these three pretty distinct roles that AI is starting to play in our moral lives. After looking at this framework, what does it tell us about where all this is headed?
So let's just recap that framework one more time. We have the agent. The AI is a decision maker, where we have to deal with bias and value alignment. We have the patient, the AI on the receiving end of our actions, which reveals our own empathy and our prejudices. And finally, we have the proxy, the AI as a tool that we use to deal with each other, for good or for ill. Understanding these three roles is absolutely key to figuring out the complex ethical road ahead.
You know, when you boil it all down, our relationship with AI is really becoming a new kind of moral mirror. How we build it, how we treat it, and how we use it just reflects our own values, our own flaws, and our own character right back at us. So the biggest question isn't just about what AI will become. It's about what it's showing us about who we already are.